hi, welcome. My name is Sarah and this is Wicked Reading. If you are new here, hi. I hope you do decide to stick around here. I am a big reader of horror and fantasy with a little bit of romance. So today we're going to do the mid-year, what is it called technically? I think it's like the mid-year book freakout tag. Yeah, the mid-year book freakout tag. Now, I could not for the life of me figure out who started this trend. So if you know, please tag them down below and I will certainly give credit where credit is due. But let's go ahead and jump right in. So the first question is best book you've read so far in 2023. So it's kind of hard because I read a decent array of genres. I stick to kind of like my main ones, but I have only given 4 books 5 stars all year so far, unfortunately. I want to show you guys an array of books. So I decided to pick 2. Both of these did receive 5 stars from me, and the first one is going to be Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings or Hastings. I have yet to figure it out. But this book is a romance. It's a toxic relationship romance, and it's pretty much think Gossip Girl, Chuck and Blair, but in the UK with these young adults, socialites, rich kids, yada yada. This book had me feeling every type of emotion possible, and I did not expect to be so drawn into this book, but I was, and I just thought that the writing in this one was just like beautiful. I have so many annotations and I want to reread it and actually like fully highlight because I just kind of like tabbed before, but I want to go through, highlight, write in this book. It was a surprising yet great experience for me. Had a great time. And then the other one is actually my most recent read and my most recent 5-star, and that is Curse of the Reaper by Brian McCauley. This is a slasher that has a lot to do with the horror movie scene, a lot of conversation surrounding kind of practical effects versus CGI, with our 2 main characters also tying in this generational gap of this person who played the original Reaper in a 80s slashers film versus this younger actor that is going to be used in a remake. So it's very interesting, the conversation with just like horror movies in general. You can tell it was written by a horror movie fan. And also it ties in addiction and sobriety, and I thought it just did such a fantastic job at that and really surprised me. So if you're super into slashers, this was my first slasher. So my slasher bar was open. So if you're super into slashers, I don't know if this will stand out for you, but for me it went so much further than a slasher, again with the addiction and sobriety conversation that really hits home for me. So this is another one that was like so far the best book of the year that I've read, and I keep thinking about it and I really like it. This is a library copy and I am 100% going to be buying a copy to put on my own shelves. So yeah. Question number 2, best sequel you've read so far in 2023. This I could also apply to question number 1, but it is The Sun and Its Shade by Piper CJ. So this is the sequel to The Night and Its Moon. And I don't care what anybody says. I absolutely love this book and this world. I like the writing. The writing was iffy in the first one, but this sequel just like, for me, I don't know. I feel so connected to this story. I loved everything that happened in the book. I love the character exploration. I love the moments of the fantasy where you can see that she was inspired by certain things. And I liked that. I like when things are inspired by, say, like The Witcher or these other series that I do like, but have a lot of flaws in my opinion, and taking those really cool aspects and creating a story that's better in my opinion. So I have absolutely loved this world, and I'm so looking forward to the 3rd one. And that will be featured in a later question. I tabbed the bejesus out of it, and best sequel, also one of my top books of the year as well. Question number 3 is new release that you haven't read yet but want to, and I just got this recently in the mail, and that is Maeve Fly by CJ Lead. First of all, this cover, I love it. I don't know why, I'm just so drawn to this book. I have heard it's very much kind of like American Psycho, but the main character is a woman and it's very stream of consciousness. It's kind of like a feminist slasher, and I totally love that. I think I'm in my slasher era right now, so this just like fits that so well, and I am so excited to read this one. I cannot wait. So question number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. So this one's tricky for me because I don't really tend to seek out what the new releases are going to be in the future, because I already have so many books that I own that I need to get to. The last thing I need is to preemptively be excited for other books in the future and already be ready to purchase more books that I also need to read. But I did end up coming up with 2 answers to this, and that is because they are continuations of series that I'm already in. So again, we're gonna bring it back to The Sun and Its Shade. So the 3rd book is The Gloom Between Stars, and that should be coming out at the end of July. So I am so excited to read that, and I will definitely be reading it as soon as it gets delivered to my house. And yeah, so that's highly anticipated for me. Another one is going to be the sequel to One Dark Window by Rachel Gilling. I recently read this. While I'm not necessarily as excited to read the sequel to this, it is anticipated for me. I will absolutely be reading it by the end of this year. I think the sequel comes out October 17th, around there. So in October, this sequel will be coming out, and I will definitely be reading it. Number 5 is biggest disappointments, and that would have to be Daisy Hates, again by Jessa Hastings. With how much I loved Magnolia Parks and had such an emotional experience from happy to sad to everything in between, this book fell so flat. I've never seen such a flop compared to the first book. Usually I feel like sequels do tend to kind of waver a little bit, but this was like so disappointing, and I cannot emphasize that enough. I actually talk about this in my May reads where I kind of go into it a little bit, and there's just like nothing. Like, I gave this 2 stars, and I feel like the only reason I even gave it 2 stars is because it's connected to Magnolia Parks. But if we're being realistic, it probably actually deserved 1 star. It was just such a disappointment. Oh my god, like I can't even emphasize that enough, how much this sucked compared to Magnolia Parks. And like, so it makes me want to read Magnolia Parks again, because like now I kind of like, did I even like Magnolia Parks that much? Like, I know I did in the moment, but this just like left just such a bad stain on the whole series for me, so that like totally sucks. But yeah, so biggest disappointment by far. Biggest surprise would be Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt. I actually also talk about this in my May Reads wrap-up video. This I just read because I wanted to read a somewhat shorter horror book while I was in the middle of a readathon, and I received this in a Nightworms package, so otherwise it would not have been on my radar at all. But wow, this was so impactful and so surprising. I did not expect it. I kind of went in not really knowing much, knowing that there was like a haunted house kind of thing aspect involved, and that was it. I just kind of read it, and wow, this book is, first of all, so heavy, so heavy. There's transphobia, there's self-harm, there's ideation along the lines of that, there's very like sexually explicit content. So it's not a light read, but it just brings up the conversation of like being transgender and the transgender experience, and I feel like that is just so relevant to today's atmosphere. And the author herself is a transgender woman, so you know it's coming from a place of like a true experience and understanding, and you feel that in the writing. And I learned a lot through this book, and it's a book I'm going to reread and I'm going to annotate, and it's very deep, and it also has some really great horror aspects. The body gore in this gets pretty wicked, and there's definitely some Shirley Jackson Haunting of Hill House kind of inspiration in there, but it's a really amazing morph of so many genres and subgenres, like, while it's horror, it's so much more than that, and it really, really surprised me. Favorite new authors. So for this I picked two because I can't help myself. And for one of them I picked The Troop by Nick Cutter, specifically The Troop because I recently read The Deep by him, and while I still love the writing in that, the story itself wasn't that great, in my opinion of course, but Nick Cutter, his writing just is so good to me. Like, it's so much different than anything else I typically read. Not story-wise, but just like his writing. He uses a lot of similes and like metaphors, and his writing is so descriptive, but like not in a boring way. Like the way he thinks to describe things is just so interesting, and I absolutely adored it. I actually have it marked because I shared it in a vlog. I do have a vlog of me reading this if you're interested in that. But there was a line, it's like a nothing line, but to describe it like that just like tickled my brain. So he says, Claire Paget looks nothing like her son. It strikes this observer that she may subsist entirely upon players' light cigarettes. She chain smokes them ruthlessly, lighting each fresh soldier off the ember of the dead one. Like all he's doing is describing a lady smoking, but I love it. I love it so much. His writing is fantastic, and yeah. Actually, thinking about it now, I think he's got a new release coming out soon. I'll have to look into that, because if that's the case, add that to my most anticipated releases. Anything new coming out from Nick Cutter, I'm going to read. I'm working through his backlist right now, but yep, his writing is fantastic. So I also wanted to pick one that was like a debut author, because Nick Cutter has been around, so he was just new to me this year, but a debut, and I'm gonna bring it back to Curse of the Reaper by Brian McCauley. So this is his debut novel. While it's his debut novel, it does say that he's like a screenwriter, and he's been involved in sitcoms and horror films, so he is an experienced writer. This was just his first novel. Again, I just loved this book, so the fact that this was his debut, I will definitely be looking out for more releases from him, and he's going to be an author that's on my radar from now on. Okay, questions 8 and 9 I'm going to combine because my answers are both in the same book. So question 8 is newest fictional crush, and then question 9 is newest favorite character. So both of these are going to be in Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon, Georgie, which is the female lead in this, and Vectal. I just really liked their interactions, and Georgie in particular, she's kind of like a smart-ass nerd type, and I loved her. I thought she was so funny. And Vectal's like funny and sweet. This was like a hard one for me because I don't feel like I've read anything that the male like stuck out to me, and like with like ACOTAR or ACMAF, I could easily say somebody for those, but any of the fantasy romance that I've actually read this year, like I did read Daughter of No Worlds, and while I like Max, he's not like a crush for me. He's not like my complete type of guy. So this was like the best I could think of otherwise. But yeah, I'm hoping to find somebody I crush on a little bit more, because while I do like Vectal and he's funny, I can't say that I'm like totally obsessed with him, but hopefully I find a better crush within the last half of this year. Question 10 is book that made you cry, and I'm gonna say again Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I think that this is the only book that made me like, I was like bawling at the end. Like that might be dramatic, but tears were streaming down my face. Me and my fiance are sitting in bed, and he like looks over and sees me crying, and I just go, good book, good book. I like have tears streaming down my face. Listen, maybe it was just the time that I read it, it just hit that much, but this made me kind of blubber a little bit. It was just like the emotional heartbreak. Oh my God. This made me bawl. I did actually also, just to bring it back again, I did tear up a little bit at The Curse of the Reaper with some of the sobriety and addiction talk. But again, that's kind of because it hits home for me. It's a little bit personal, but that did make me tear up. But otherwise, Magnolia Parks is the only book I've read all year that made me cry. Again, I read a lot of horror, so I don't really tend to like cry with horror, but yeah. So question number 11 is a book that made you happy. And again, because I read so much like horror, I don't find myself being that happy per se with books, but one series that I am reading that makes me nothing but happy is Yona of the Dawn by Mizuo Kusanagi. This series just always brings me nothing but joy. I love it. This volume in particular, volume 9, I was kicking my feet and squealing like a little girl. There's one particular scene in it on page 144, I think it is, and a couple of the pages after that I was just like, I love this series so much. It's so cute. I highly, highly recommend reading it. It is a manga series, obviously, but it focuses on our main character, Yona, and she was a princess of like a kingdom or whatever, and due to some circumstances leading up to it and devastation, she ends up having to flee the castle or the palace, and there's some people coming after her, and she flees with her bodyguard, and along the way they end up picking up kind of some like friends, and there's some things that they want to do, and it's kind of very found family feeling with a lot of emphasis on Yona kind of growing up, finding her voice, finding her strength, and there is potentially a romance that may blossom, and it makes me nothing but happy. I love this series. So good. Question 12 is most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. So I actually picked 3 because I couldn't decide, and I like them all for different reasons. So first we have Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. And I just think that that is stunning. It's very bizarre, weird, and abstract, and I love it. So yeah, another one I picked out was Taste Like Candy by Ivy Tholen, and this is solely because of the color theme. I love it. The pastels, the pink cotton candy. I think it's just so cute. It's so unique in my collection, and I love it. Mostly for the color scheme. And then another one I picked was Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. I just love this cover. I love the contrast on it. The claw with the stiletto nails. Like, yes, queen. Love it. I think that this is super beautiful as well. Question 13 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So starting off with a bang, I need to read this because everybody else is doing it, and that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. And additionally, I do actually need to read it by the end of June for a readathon I'm doing. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I have to explain anything here. Everybody and their mom is reading this one. So like, I have to read it while the hype is there. I don't necessarily know or think that I'm going to be as hyped about it as everybody else. But nonetheless, I want to read it while everybody else is. So definitely need to read this. But then I also picked out 2 more. So the next one is Children of Fallen Gods by Carissa Broadbent. This is the sequel to Daughter of No Worlds. So I really, really do want and probably need to read this by the end of the year and finish out this series. I've heard that this one is better than the first one, and I did enjoy the first one. I gave it 4 stars, but if this one's better, like, I definitely need to get into it. I do also have it downloaded on my Kindle because it is on KU, and hopefully I'm thinking I'm going to read this. I'm doing a lot of traveling in July, and I'm thinking that I might read this on my Kindle while I'm traveling. But I don't know, I've been redrawn to it recently, so I definitely need to get to this one. And then a third one I picked out solely because it is just like speaking to me and I really want to read it so bad, and that is We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. This has to do with a heavy metal band, and I'm a listener of heavy metal, so I love that. And it ties in kind of like these 90s vibes and horror, but it's written by Grady Hendrix, so I think it'll be a fun time. I'm really excited for it. I've really been craving horror combined with kind of like music atmosphere and music aspects. So yeah, the fact that it's heavy metal is fantastic for me. And yeah, I really need to read this solely because I just really want to. So, and then the last question is favorite book community member. So this is so difficult for me because there's so many people I want to talk about. So I'm gonna like look through my phone and make sure I don't forget anybody, and I might still, so I'm so sorry if I forget you. But first of all, I would like to shout out some of my subscribers that, girlfriend, I see you down there. I see you commenting every week and I appreciate you and I love you. So I want to shout out Demelda Pen Kitty 7937. I see you down there all the time. My girl Vita Reads, Rebecca 4259. I see you all the time. Shout out to your fiance for having my birthday. Miss Wendy Villa 2904, Faye 9839, and I'm sure I'm missing some, so I'm so sorry, but everybody else that comes and keeps watching my videos and my content, thank you so much. Like, your support means the absolute world. I cannot express that enough. Now, I want to shout out some other creators on BookTube. There's so many too. Tori Between Pages, she does a lot of fantasy. Happy Haunts Library, Lauren on there. She reads pretty much exclusively horror. Kelsey at Slimes and Slashers. I met her because of Books with Lexi's readathon last month. The Escape the Readathon. Shout out to both of them. Amy Noel Reads. She is actually the reason that I read Curse of the Reaper because it's part of her Dark Hearts book club. So double shout out for you because I freaking love that book. Katrina Brown. She's another horror reader. Locke's Library. Lachlan at Locke's Library. She does some fantasy, but a lot of romance. So if you're more of a romance girly, check her out. Becca in the Books, I'm sure you guys know her. She does a lot of fantasy. Love her stuff. A Frolic Through Fiction, Ashley on there. Me and her have very similar book taste as far as fantasy. So shout out to her. I watch her videos all the time. Victoria at English Rose Reads. And I'm sure there's so much more, but my battery's dying, so I have to kind of cut it off. So shout out to all of you, whether you watch my videos or whether I watch your videos. Thanks for the content or thanks for the support. So that is going to be everything for me today. I'm gonna copy the questions into the description, and if you want to answer the questions in the comments, please do so. I'd love to know what your answers would be. As always, thank you so much for watching my video. I truly appreciate you taking some of your time and spending it with me while I talk about books. If you haven't yet, please give the video a like, subscribe for future content, turn on the bell notification, all the fun YouTube things that help your girl out, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye!